There are two schools of thought when there is something ugly in the news. One is to address it head on in order to clarify and take the risk of calling greater attention to the matter. Or, on the other hand, to ignore it, making it more likely that the story will fizzle out, but risk never taking the chance to set the story straight. In the Jewish press for many weeks now, there has been something ugly festering. It has even been given a name, the Shabbat affair. The Pulitzer Prize-winning author Michael Shabbat was invited to address the graduates and the ordinees from the Los Angeles campus of our Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. Michael Shabbat's books like Cavalier and Clay and Wonder Boys and Yiddish Policemen's Union are well known, as are his left-leaning politics. But no one could have expected the bomb that he would set off in the form of a deflating address to the soon-to-be rabbis and Jewish professionals. An address like that is never vetted in advance. His provocative words, in my opinion, were self-serving. He did not address the students or their proud families who had invested so much in their Jewish education and were so hopeful for all they would bring to the Jewish people. Instead, he used the platform to reflect upon and validate his own personal life choices as a Jew. Those choices are his to make, but not fitting for the occasion. One student, you may have read, walked out from the sanctuary that day and wrote an article for the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. The article was entitled, "My Graduation Was Ambushed." Since then, there has been mudslinging from some Orthodox voices, name-calling from some Jews on the political right, scathing accusations from some Zionist circles, and back-turning from some in Israel who take this as evidence that diaspora Jewry no longer understands or cares about Israel. There has also been some defensive voices from among the administration and the faculty of HUC-JIR, and mostly polite infighting among rabbis and leadership across the Reform movement. So what did he say that sparked all this? You can easily Google it and read the whole train of articles about it, but I'll share just the headline. What was interesting about it was he called upon the class of 2018. He addressed them Jewish leaders of the future, and he implored them, knock down the walls. He went on to say in his beautiful writing, I abhor homogeneity, and insularity, exclusion and segregation, the redlining of neighborhoods, the erection of border walls and separation barriers. I am for mongrels and hybrids and creoles, from syncretism and confluence, for jazz and Afrobeat and Thai surf music, for integrated neighborhoods and open borders and the preposterous history of Barack Obama. I am for the hodgepodge cuisines of seaports and crossroads, for sampling and mashups, pastiche and collage. I am for ambiguity, ambivalence, fluidity, muddle, complexity, diversity, creative balagan. Even when it comes to my own psyche, Shabbat says, the only emotions I really trust are mixed emotions. I ply my craft in English, that most magnificent of Creoles, and my personal house of language is haunted by the Dybbuk of Yiddish, that most humble and sly. Monocultural places, one language, one religion, one haplotype, make me profoundly uncomfortable, whether they're found inside or beyond the ghetto walls. Now, some of that is exciting. Here we enjoy the multiplicity of voices in Canada, the multicultural life of this exquisite city of Toronto. We know where he's coming from when he says much of these things. It is a delight to enjoy the blending of cultures, to hear the languages, so many languages on the subway lines. But something goes very wrong when the examples he gives about tearing down walls point to the borders between Israel and territories. It shows some callousness to the Israeli reality. And then he also points another provocative example of tearing down walls, is that even though he himself has married a Jewish woman named Ayelet, he says that marrying within the Jewish people is not to be admired. There is that word over and over again in our prayer book, in our Torah, kadosh, sanctity, holiness. And one way of understanding the way towards holiness, not that it is ever achieved, I spoke of that last Shabbat, but something that we strive to reach ever on the horizon, is to understand that we do need distinctions, that distinctions can be helpful. We call the Torah a holy book, for example. We treat it uniquely by how we keep it in the Aron HaKodesh and how we read from it in the Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language of Hebrew, and how we carry it lovingly, how we kiss it, how we dance with it on Simchat Torah. We treat that book, that holy book, uniquely to distinguish it from all the other good books in the world. And think of Shabbat, a day that is kadosh, a day that is set apart from all the other ordinary days of the week, where a lot of good can happen. And we say, this day we treat uniquely. We gather uniquely, we dress uniquely, we bless uniquely, we celebrate uniquely. These kinds of distinctions are helpful, and they help us to know where we come from and to whom we belong and where we ought to go. Now, by chance, I was also invited to address the ordinees of Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion this year. Michael Shaban at the Los Angeles campus, and I went to the original campus in Cincinnati. I certainly did not speak about building up the walls. That's not what the Reform movement was founded upon. The Reform movement was about taking down the ghetto walls, going out into the world with kadosh. If the walls are anything in the eyes and the experience of Reform Jews, it's a wall that is invisible and permeable, where every inch is filled with windows that we can open and doors that swing open wide, revolving doors, elevators up and down. That's our kind of wall. I didn't speak of those permeable walls either, the ones that let the light in and the light out, but instead I spoke of building up the people. And I spoke in a way that Michael Shaban did not, about the need for optimism. I really felt he took something away from the students that day, their sense of optimism as they were going out into the world to lead the Jewish people as best they could, as best they can. I said in Cincinnati, please, rabbis, whenever you can, be an optimist, because people look to us sometimes skeptically, sometimes desperately, for a message that God is good and there is reason to be hopeful. Our people reject simple answers and see through foolish promises, but they do want reason to believe that despite life's trials, still many things are possible, including Jewish continuity. And I shared a little Yiddish poem by Aaron Zeitlin, which describes this particular kind of faith. I wish I could share it with Michael Shaban himself. It goes like this. Being a Jew means running forever to God, even if you are God's betrayer. It means expecting to hear any day, even if you are a naysayer, the blare of Messiah's horn. Means even if you wish to, you cannot escape God's snares. You cannot cease to pray, even after all the prayers, even after all the evens. When Moses mistakenly, perhaps out of exhaustion, forfeited his optimism in this week's parasha, we see it was a fatal flaw. Let it not be the fatal flaw of our people, God forbid. Chapter 20 in this week's Torah portion begins, Vayavo v'nei Yisrael kol ha'eda midbartzin b'chodesh harishon vayeshev ha'am ba'kadesh. The Israelites, the entire Eda, the entire congregation, arrived at the wilderness of Tzin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. The chapter opens with hope and optimism. We are an Eda, a cohesive congregation with our eyes set on the future, with our eyes set on the land of Israel. And it is Rosh Chodesh, when the moon's first light shined again, waxing day by day to brighten the wilds of the wilderness at night. And we settled at a place called Kadesh, holiness. All is well when we are an Eda. The people is a unit, a congregation. The time is literally growing brighter and the place is called holiness. And then it all falls apart. Miriam dies, and the well she kept dries up, and Moses is grieving or tired or terrified, and he lashes out at his people, and he lashes out at the rock. And he is told that he will pay a heavy price. He will not live to see promise fulfilled. And then his brother Aaron dies, and the kindness and the peace that he brought among the people and between the people was forgotten. Parashat Chukat tells of a crisis of leadership. Without the trifecta of Miriam, Moses, and Aaron, the people crack. The beginning of chapter 20 describes the Israelites as an Eda, as a wholesome and whole congregation. But by the end of our parasha, we read these words. Vayis'u b'nei Yisrael, vayachanu be'arvot Moav me'ever le'Yarden Yericho. The Israelites journeyed on and encamped by the steps of Moav across the Jordan from Jericho. By the last verse of our parasha, we are no longer an Eda, a unit, a congregation, but now we have been reduced to a machaneh, to a camp. Rabbi Soloveitchik teaches the distinction between an Eda, a congregation, and a machaneh, a camp. A camp is formed by fear of a common enemy or a perceived threat. A camp is established when people feel helpless and band together for protection. A congregation, on the other hand, shares a common ideology and is bound by love rather than by fear. They aspire to a holy practice that will bring us to a sacred purpose. An Eidah is not a defensive formation, but a creative one. People join to do together what none of us could achieve alone. A society built around a shared project, a vision of the common good, is not a machaneh, but an Eidah, not a camp, but a congregation. Rabbi Soloveitchik says a congregation, a camp, is brought into being by what happens to it from the outside. But a congregation comes into existence by internal decision. The former, a camp, is reactive. A congregation is proactive. A camp is a response to what has happened to us in the past. A congregation represents what the group seeks to achieve in our shared future, our destiny. Now, usually, the story goes that we begin as a camp and we evolve, we grow to become a congregation. But our parasha comes to teach that there are also times of backsliding. And I fear that now is one of those times when the Jewish people goes from being an Eidah, a congregation, and reverts back to being a machaneh, a camp. When our ideological clarity, our uniting vision gets cloudy and we are reduced to nothing more than a camp. This can easily happen when we lose a leader. And I believe this episode with Michael Shaban is fallout from the devastating loss, the heartbreaking loss of the Rosh Yeshiva, the president of Hebrew Union College, Rabbi Aaron Pankin. I don't know if the news has reached all of you, but just weeks before Michael Shaban's address, Rabbi Pankin was killed in a plane crash. If he were alive, I believe he would have clarified for us all. He would have told us why he invited Shaban in the first place. And I knew Aaron Pankin. I really admired him. I imagine he read all of Shaban's books, which were smart and funny, as Aaron was. Rabbi Pankin probably delighted in the chance to bring a Pulitzer Prize winner to address the graduates and ordinees with an imaginative address, peppered with clever turns of phrase. But after hearing something so different and so demoralizing, I believe President Pankin would have contextualized and clarified what Shaban's personal opinion was and what is the position of Hebrew Union College today. Certainly one of Zionism and one of Jewish continuity. After reading that student's article, I believe Rabbi Pankin would have consoled her and even apologized publicly for any hurt. But a frightful and untimely death has robbed us of his good leadership. And his predecessor, who has now become his temporary successor, Rabbi David Ellenson, who is a lover of Israel to the very core, and who has devoted his entire life to Jewish continuity, could say nothing that would bring any dishonor to Aaron's memory, God forbid. Aaron's family grieves the deepest, to be sure, but the Reform movement grieves the widest. Fearful factions usually disintegrate altogether, but a camp, a machaneh, can become a congregation once again. A machaneh can morph into an Eidah. A camp can elevate itself as it is written in the book of Deuteronomy, your camp shall become holy. This mitzvah of becoming a holy congregation, a holy people, is a sign to us all, to all the Jewish people, Reform and Orthodox, faithful and secular, in Israel and throughout the wide diaspora. All of us are called upon to raise our camp in aspirations of holiness and emerge as an Edah, a holy congregation, stronger in body and spirit. Good people, I believe we are doing our part here at Holy Blossom Temple. We are a congregation of Ohavei Yisrael, lovers of Israel. We are a congregation not only willing to dream of the Jewish future, but to invest in it, literally to build it. We are a congregation able in a single day to celebrate a cantor's 50 years of raising the congregational voices in united and uniting prayers. And also, we are a congregation that on a single day can celebrate a bat mitzvah who is just getting started with her life of mitzvot. The Jewish people can fulfill its most worthy and noble mission when we allow ourselves to dream again in terms of destiny rather than fate. That is Rabbi Soloveitchik's teaching. Such shared aspirations are powerful enough to transform a camp into a sacred congregation. And that is exactly how loyalty, loving loyalty, wins over fear, and sacred purpose wins over triumphalism. Ashreinu matov chalkenu, umanaim goralenu, umayafa Yerushatenu. How fortunate are we, how good is our portion, how pleasant our destiny, how beautiful is this, our unique inheritance.